Welcome back to part 5 of a White Gray Black Manga Book Club discussion of Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. My name is Bruce, and I am joined again by my constant co-host, Gautam.
Hello, hello.
This section was a little intense, and things are finally starting to roll pretty quickly downhill. This part 5, is called Dai Kaisho, and it certainly is a big wave. How did we feel about this part? Just first impressions, Gautam.
I feel like the last three or four segments have been that exact descriptor in my eyes, where things are just like constantly escalating to unfathomable points. I love it. It's great. Shit has truly gone to shit in this recent chapter or segment, actually.
Yeah, I know we talked last time about things get worse before they get better in a story arc, and this one I think goes even further down, and I think we end at the lowest point, and I think it's all sort of uphill from here, though there might still be some loss along the way, I would assume, just thinking about story tropes. But yeah, this was this was a very intense chapter, I would say. Let's get into...
I would agree. Before we get into it, it's like the whole Dorok Empire just got wiped. So that's like about half of the world's population. And all of the world leaders are like, oh yeah, world's ending. Let's keep fighting each other. Which is effectively what happened this chapter. I absolutely loved it. It is so fucked at the moment.
Yeah, it's wild. Another thing I guess I want to mention before we get started is in the hardcover volumes, the two big volumes of English translations that we have, the art at the start of the volumes is incredible. It is, I believe, a sort of a full-size color picture that you can see on the right here of these kind of full-page color spreads that Hayao Miyazaki drew.
They were really good. I think there was really a little spoiler which confirmed my theory earlier with the God Warrior and Nausicaä being chummy.
Oh, really? I didn't even pick up on that. I think I flipped through him because I was kind of like, I didn't want to get spoiled by the art, so...
Oh yeah, well there you go. I spoiled it for you.
Well, I know. I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm not a spoiler guy. I think I know how the story is going. But yeah, I mean, we start off, as you mentioned, in the capital city of the Holy Dorok Empire called Shua. We've got lots of doctors and holy guys trying to save the Emperor's brother, Mr. Darth Vader himself. There, and we finally meet. I don't know if you can call him the big bad. When he's introduced, he kind of feels like the big bad, but I think by the end of this part, he's much, again, for, ad nauseum, a little bit more nuanced than that, because the writing here is good. We meet the Emperor of the Emperor of Dorok, finally.
He's very much the big bad, it feels like to me.
I think so, too, yeah.
I think the difference is that, even as an audience member, he is charismatic and likable.
Yes.
Even though he's evil.
You're right, which I think is just good character design, good character building in general, because he's super smart. He's sort of a young, as we'll learn later, kind of reborn for hundreds of years, I would assume, guy. But yeah, when we meet him, he is being shown that the Doroks have a god warrior that they are growing. They have the black box, but they believe they're missing some part of it. Something's going wrong. I kind of assume that this is the little MacGuffin we got in part 1. That little, whatever the thing was from the Pejite people. But maybe not. There might be something else there. So, we also get to meet another sort of important new player here. I put Meet the Heavy because they are these big bad boys called the Hydra. We're going to see more of them, but now we see them. They're big monstrous guys. We know that they hang out with the Emperor and I think guard him. After that, there's some body horror stuff. I mean, the whole story, honestly, is pretty... I don't know if I would call it horror, coded, but there's scary, intense stuff. And this is a really intense section here where the Emperor's brother, right, they've put him in this sort of healing container. He wakes up in this dream and sort of oh, I'm in a young body. I'm finally recovered. And his body starts falling apart in this very horror way where he gets cracks and his skin sloughs off and his cuts and blood. We see that the brother guy, he mentions, it's the same death his father had, where his body just sort of fell apart. I think we're meant to connect this to the sort of rebirth that the Emperor has been doing, we learn, and his brother has not been doing. He's been trying to sort of preserve his original body, or, not be sort of, I don't know if it's like cloning. It doesn't really explain it, but it explains in some way that these Dorok royalty are reborn in some way and get a new body. And that somehow led to their father's death. And it is affecting the bad guy's dreams, and the Emperor is sort of reborn. He's like a young man. He looks like he's like 20 in this story. So
yeah, effectively, and it's mentioned a little later in the chapter as well. But they have kind of clone vessels with no soul in them, and they transplant their body. And their father died by doing this transplant procedure, and it didn't work. And the body fell apart. So the brother who preaches that there's an afterlife to all of his followers, doesn't believe it himself. So he's terrified to do this procedure because of what happened to his father. So he's just into that.
So the Emperor and his bro, the bro kind of comes up the Emperor approaches the brother, who's again in the sort of healing tank. They connect mentally because these are like superpowered dudes, and is shown Nausicaä. So the Emperor now sort of knows about Nausicaä, is given a little bit of context there.
One small correction there is that the Emperor himself doesn't have any powers, just the brother.
Okay.
Because the Emperor was like bitter about how much power his brother had due to his mental abilities.
I thought that the Emperor still had a little bit of power, because he later on, I mean, it doesn't matter if we spoil the chapter. Later on, when he controls the Hydra, I thought it was implied that he has some small, maybe not. I don't think he's nearly as strong as his brother. I think his brother is clearly the like stronger mental power telepath. Right, but I think the Emperor does have a little bit of the like mental connection stuff too. I think. I'm not sure. I don't think it directly says any of this, so we could be wrong. But
yeah.
But yeah. So the dying bro is sort of mad. He tries to use the sort of medical tentacles that he controls to grab his brother. I put a real parenthetical. It says very similar to the Omu, this kind of tentacly grabbing thing that goes on here. Part of I would say a consistent design, like we talked about in the early chapters. The design here is really good.
Right, yeah.
Knocks his brother's hat off, and we see kind of what we already talked about. He's very young. His brother, we've seen, is incredibly ugly, looks very old, kind of a withered body. The Emperor is super young. So, we get more talks of how his brother's been translated many times. Emperor has this cool confidence. He kind of leaves after this confrontation. He orders his goons to like seal the brother up. He doesn't matter anymore. Time to go. Then we cut over to the Toromekian army. They are pulling out of their front line. So this is the group, I believe, that was with Kushana or maybe behind Kushana. But anyways, the Valley Boys and Yupa are there. And they're flying. They're flying, and they see one of the Royal Toromekian corvettes. So, we don't know who's on this. It doesn't really show us much more of it yet. But the new girl, I'm trying to remember her name now.
Ketcha.
Ketcha, yes. Ketcha is also with them. She's in these Toromekian sort of refugee camps. She fights against a bunch of people because they're abusing Dorok slaves, and she's a Dorok. She doesn't like that. There's a big kind of action fleeing scene with Yupa, Ketcha, and their little chocobo egg, and the Valley Boys. They're all kind of... there's not a whole lot really revealed here other than the fact that we know that this miasma is coming. We know that the Daikaisho is coming. The Toromekians are kind of in a bad place, but they're still not... They are not... war has made them bad, and so they are abusing... They have these slaves that are Dorok, so it's just a little bit, I think, of like world building in this scene right here.
It is world building, and it's a scene to kind of show later on when Kushana joins the Valley Boys and Yupa. It's to justify Ketcha and Asbel's reactions and anger. It's a reminder to the audience, I think.
Yes, you're definitely right. I think this is a reminder because the last time that we heard about sort of Ketcha, Asbel, Pejite, their city, and Kushana was, I think, in part 1, which if we're going by how long it's been writing this, it's been like 8 years since that part came out or something. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a reminder of that to contextualize what happens in a couple of chapters. So we skip ahead again and we see Ketcha talking with some of the rebelling Doroks. She's kind of like, I'm on your side, be good. The group then, this sort of group of Ketcha and the Valley Boys and Asbel, they fly up and they see some sea of corruption sprouting from the dead bodies of the flying insects, which we saw in part 3 and 4 that attacked, that are pushing the Toromechians back. So, on the ground, they sort of... oh, yeah, that's right. So they fly up, they see the Sea of Corruption sprouting. They fly over one of these overtaken cities that we saw at the end, I believe, of Part 4. And we see, kind of out of this overtaken city, come Kushana and Kurotawa. And Kushana is sort of giving Kurotawa through this... I don't know if it's a makeshift mask, but sort of a jerry-rigged mask so that he can drink out of it. And they're all just sort of trapped, stuck in their masks. It's mentioned that it's hard to drink water when you have your mask on, so that kind of puts a time limit on them, unless you have a really fancy mask like Kushana does. They hear the Valley Boys and that group flying overhead. Kushana and her men fire off signal flares. And oops, the Toromechian Corvette is right behind them. So the Valley Boys have a short little dogfight with the Corvette. They win that dogfight. The Corvette retreats. They land. They meet up with Kushana, and we're starting again. I think I mentioned this slightly in the last part also, but we kind of had a story that spread out and split people up, and we're slowly, in this part, we're starting to bring people together. We're starting to bring Kushana and the Valley Boys and Asbel and Yupa and all these people. They're now all kind of one group, and we're getting a little bit of splitting off, but it's more of paring back on lead characters at that point. But again, things are starting to come together. So I think definitely in part 6 and 7, we're definitely going to see sort of less and less separate storylines, because we've got, I guess, 3 or 4 different storylines going on right now. I think we're gonna be paring that down.
And the only reason that they're not murdering the fuck out of each other is because of their connection to Nausicaä, which is kind of funny, yeah. Everyone really wants each other's blood. Like, Kushana says we can't attack them because they're Nausicaa's allies, and Asbel and Ketcha absolutely want to kill Kushana, but they also hold their temper in.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the next thing that we see happen, right? Is Asbel literally pulls a sword out and runs at Kushana. He's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." Yupa, this is I'm trying to think of how many times Yupa, it's like once every section, Yupa stops somebody and is like, "No, we are not fighting," because he did it in part 1 with what is it? He did it in part 1 with Nausicaä. I think he did it in part 2 with Asbel again, and they ran away, or maybe part 3. He's doing it again here in part 5, stopping Asbel.
I think it helps that he is just a good dude, but is also the strongest fighter in the world, in that world.
Yes.
So, he's a nice guy that people want on their side, but also he can fuck them up if any of them actually try something.
Yes, it's a very interesting take. I really like Yupa. I think when we get to the end, we'll definitely have a little talk about Yupa and his place in this, but he's a very interesting take on the sort of Gandalf type character, where he is older, he is sage-like, he is more knowledgeable, he is generally seen to be universally correct in all of his decision-making. He is very strong when he needs to be, but he is generally against kind of fighting. So yeah, Yupa serves a very interesting point, and it is almost always one of sort of making peace, not fighting, but he's also the best fighter, so yeah.
Right.
This is where, I don't remember if we knew this, I think we did. Asbel points out again that hey, Kushana's the one who literally massacred, genocided the entire town, city-state of Pejite. So
men, women, children, all that.
Yeah, everybody except for Asbel and Ketcha. No, Ketcha is not from there. Just Asbel and his sister, who died later. So Asbel might be the only survivor there. Ketcha's from the Doroks. I was confused. So
right.
So next thing, we've got the Valley Boys and Kushana. Like I said, they link up. They take her up in the ship. Kushana recalls what happened to her at the end of the bug attack, which this is a cool part because because her brother died, she was sort of calmed, which made the bugs not see her as a threat, which she remembers, I think Nausicaä telling her, it's like, if you cast aside your hatred and fear, the bugs will not attack. So because she was sort of at peace with her brother dying there, and that kind of wiped out her negative emotions, she was kind of left, not necessarily feelingless, but definitely a little robbed of hatred and fear, because her hatred and fear was for her brother. So the bugs didn't attack her. She sort of calmed her men, the few who had survived. Kushana mentions, as she's talking about this, that the Tormekians need a new king. This is, we talked about this in the last part. I think I asked, do you think Kushana is going to be the replacement? I think here she says it in so many words that essentially she's like, Tormekia needs a new leader. Wink, wink, it's me.
Right. I am the only reasonable one here, he says. In front of the war victims, you know?
Yeah, and the next little note I have here is Asbel and Ketcha are like, SDF you bitch. You killed so many people. We hate you.
And then Kushana was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Like, you got me? Yeah, Kushana is still, I think, my favorite character in this.
No, she's great. She's great, yeah.
Yeah. So next we cut to Nausicaä with the white mold. And we see the Doroks. I wrote the word bombing the mold. I don't know what that's supposed to read as. Bombing. Yes, autocorrect is right. Yes, the Doroks are bombing the mold. Which she is like, that's not going to work, obviously. She, I think, notes that she can feel the pain or the confusion and fear from the mold here. Anyway, she returns with Chikaku, the little psychic boy, and the priest, Charka, and tells the survivors to, like, go find high ground. This is going to be bad. You need to run away. And she's been doing this. We'll learn by the end of the chapter. She's been telling a lot of people to, like, get the fuck out of here. She notes that there are 4 of these molds, and they're all going to converge in a single place. Again, this is a literal version of what I was talking about with bringing all the parts together to have your sort of story climax occur is a single thing. Literally 4 molds coming together. Nausicaä talks about her experience with the small molds of the forest, which she would gather up and separate, and when she released them, they would create a ball and burst, sending their spores. That's kind of how they propagate. Nausicaä also discusses the voice of the mold, which she hears, of course, which she says is terrible, and the creature is wretched, and it only knows hatred and fear, which is pretty aggressively negative words from Nausicaä, I would say.
Right. And she also says in her experimentation with the forest mold that once the mold stopped aggressively, like, attacking it, like, itself and everything around it, it kind of worked in unity with the rest of, like, her experimental little biome. Yep. So the plants, the insects, and the mold kind of all worked in unity after a given time. Effectively implying that even though the mold is, like, man-made, that the nature harmonizes eventually.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is definitely foreshadowing, one, for sort of what we expect out of the mold in the story, but also I think you're hitting on the resolution of the story probably here, right? Is that,
right?
You know, by the end of this part, the mold and the Daikaisho and the Omu are all together, and it seems like they're sort of gonna war, but I think what this is showing us is that there's a balance will be reached. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Nausicaä then has this interesting sort of dream encounter with a big skeleton man who looks very scary. He says, I am the elder, and he preaches some dark shit, some kind of end of the world, give up, all the humans should die, be consumed by fire and born anew in the world. He says stuff like that.
And he says it's like, oh, it's peaceful here. It's fine if everyone dies.
It's very peaceful in hell where everyone is dead, where I am. Yes.
Yeah, he's like the avatar of nothingness. So I guess like avatar of the void. But he's like that boss in Dark Souls 3, that giant skeleton man.
Yeah, I was a couple notes down here. I have Nausicaä. She sort of sees a light while doing this, and he says, drives away High Lord Wolnir, who's the Dark Souls 3 boss. And
that's so funny.
like an Omu appears in her dream. Yeah, I think I call him that again later when he shows up the next time. But yeah, this guy is just very sort of like big skeleton in a dark room. So if you've ever played Dark Souls 3, that's High Lord Wolnir. So when she encounters the Omu in her dream, she tells the Omu not to come. She's still trying to save sort of these big creatures that she's in love with. She's woken up on the ship, kind of finds more refugees outside. So this is a big refugee situation going on. There's people up on the hill. They see Nausicaä and they start to like worship her. These are Doroks. And the old priest guy Charuka is like, hey, stop that. Like, you're not worshiping her. We have our own religion. Like, I am a member of it. You can't do that.
Yeah, it's like, don't do this outwardly. I won't narc. Just get in the ship and keep this on the hush-hush. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very much like Nausicaä. Chikaku, the little psychic voice, there's a little encounter here where I think Charuka calls like Nausicaä a preacher or the people or something. And Chikaku says Nausicaä isn't a preacher, she's the apostle, which I think is a cool little thing. I don't know. I put this as one of my favorite plot points. One of my favorite plot points is when a story is told and the main character of the story is not actually the protagonist. The best example I can give you this is actually just from the Bible, if you're familiar with it. Before Jesus shows up, right, there's a guy called John the Baptist, and everyone thinks John the Baptist is like the savior. They're like, he's been baptizing people, and he says, no, he says like, I'm not the guy's coming, I'm not him. And they're like, no, you are the guy. I think it's a cool story to sort of tell the story from a point of view of someone who is your main character, but is not actually the sort of hero that was promised, as you might think.
Do you think the hero is? Do you think the Jesus figure is the God warrior or the Omu?
So that I don't know where this is going. This might not actually line up with the way that Nausicaä goes, because I think Nausicaä is more likely Jesus in this situation. But I don't want to spoil any movies because it's kind of a big plot point, a couple of them, but like the new Blade Runner kind of hits on this, where it's like, you are the main character, but you are not the hero, etc. I just think it's a really cool thing. So we'll see. I am guessing
you made a good point that I didn't think about, though. I think there is a chance that Nausicaä is highly competent and influences everything in this story, sure, but the verbiage that she's an apostle means that there is something of greater influence that she is kind of in front of, right?
Right.
And I don't know if that is the Daikai show or if that's the God Warrior with God literally in the name.
Well, I think
it's something else.
I don't think it's either of those. If I had to guess, I would say that just from what I've seen from Miyazaki and what I've read so far, I think what it's going to end up being is that Nausicaä is a human and she's the apostle, but the real sort of God savior figure is nature, right? The sort of rebirth and power of nature in general. That's the God that people are looking for, because I think that Miyazaki, in everything that I've seen from him, very much reveres nature as a sort of godlike power. And if you've seen...
That's a good point. I think you're right.
Yeah, that would be my guess, but it could go either way. Nausicaä could literally like ascend. She could go Super Saiyan at the end. Who knows? I think the story could definitely still work if that happens. So let's see. Nausicaä flies into the spores, sees a bunch of bugs in the miasma. She follows them down and finds the sort of singular scout Omu, who I think she encountered in part 1 or 2. The scout Omu looks dead. She lands on it, but it isn't dead. Of course not. But it's already sort of sprouting and growing stuff. So the Omu, visually, if you're listening to us and you have not read Nausicaä, first of all, please go check it out. Its art is beautiful. The Omu are sort of constantly covered in this growth, this miasma, this sort of small sprouting plants, kind of mold fungus type stuff. This Omu, who is like sprouting like a if you've ever seen a dead log that has growth on it of like mushrooms and stuff like that, he's kind of sprouting like that, which is really cool. She wants this scout Omu that's still alive. She talks to it telepathically. She says, tell the Omu to go back to the forest. Like, you're going to get here. The mold's going to take you out. It's going to be awful. Don't do it. But the Omu dies. You're just like, nope, sorry. It dies and just sprouts even more. She realizes, I think, or the story tells us that this dying Omu is meant as a seed bed for these spore forests to grow. Play the Circle of Life song, right? This is very sort of Circle of Life in that the Omu carry this life with them. They die. They provide, the dying of one creature, like I mentioned with the tree, provides a home for other creatures. So, big Circle of Life vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And oh no, never mind. This is later on. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Nausicaä goes into this dream world again. Begs the Omu not to die. She finds some regular mold from the forest asking for help, which is interesting. This is shit gets a little weird here. She, in the past, here we see that she had taken mold, which made it scared, and then when she released it, it went and fought the other mold, where it lost. And then that mold that she had sort of taken and separated was now aggressive because it was attacked. I don't know if I totally get what this part was going for.
This is what I was mentioning earlier. I guess I got the part like where it was in the story confused. But
yeah.
Oh, sorry, my cat just knocked something over. Yeah, so I think this is effectively she was saying because she separated the mold from the rest of nature. It is like nature is all like one giant circle of life thing. Everything relies on everything else. So when separated, the mold felt like a part of itself was missing, felt isolated, kind of like humans do. And started attacking everything around it. And when reintroduced to Nausicaa's biome of nature, it started everything started stabilizing and becoming one with each other again.
Right. I think the other part we're supposed to get out of this, is that the big bad mold, I think it's telling us it's also sort of this afraid and aggressive. But yeah, like you were saying, my next note here says Nausicaä realizes that the mold is a sort of a family member to the Omu. It's all part of nature. It's all sort of involved in a great big family, so to speak.
And I think it's like more so that it is the Omu, right? The Omu is the forest. In the Omu's mind, it's not considered. It doesn't consider itself a separate being. The forest, the insects, everything in it, is just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very hive mind, circle of life. We're all connected. Connections in nature. Yeah, it's stuff you have seen before in other art for sure, but this is a really cool, interesting version of it. So she notes that she thinks when we saw the bugs, I think at the end of last part, trying to eat the Omu, they're trying to eat, she says, the suffering of the mold. But since they couldn't eat it, that didn't work, right? They were trying to just consume it to sort of take it into their body, reintroduce it, make it a part of the circle again. Since they couldn't do it, what they're now going to do is they're going to make a forest bed to welcome the mold when it arrives. This is what the Omu are on its way to meet this scout Omu and do. She realizes that where she is right now is where the master scout Omu died, is the place where the four molds are going to converge. So.
And when she sees, I think when someone else, I think Yupa, sees the Omu, he mentions that their eyes are not red. They aren't angry. Even though it's, what is the storm called? Daikaisho. Even though the Daikaisho is going on and they're effectively ending the world for humans, they are not angry. They're not doing this out of spite or vengeance. They are just restabilizing nature.
Yeah, this is brought up. Yeah, this is brought up a couple times where we'll bring it up. I think more when we see the Omu again in their eyes because we haven't met the wave yet, but we meet them pretty soon. So let's see. Nausicaä flies up to a location and she just kind of finds high ground, decides to wait for the Omu to come to her. She asks in a very meta way, "Is this the end of my journey?" And she says, "The world is so beautiful. The world shines so. So why?" And then we jump to the next scene, which I think is great. I think all of Nausicaa's scenes in this one are very she's been very connected in the past parts of sort of Nausicaä in the middle of other people doing things involved with people. And in this one, she's kind of disconnected, even though she is around some refugees for a while, but she feels very kind of, it feels like on the hero's journey, this is the sort of self-discovery part where Nausicaä goes out on her own to discover things instead of relying on a team or a group to teach her things. She needs to kind of go out and figure stuff out on her own. I think that's what this part is for Nausicaä.
Agreed. And I have a point on Nausicaa's disposition that we'll bring up later, because I think it's really interesting for a protagonist, especially like kind of a Jesus figure like her, to have this kind of mindset. But we'll go on for now.
Sure. So we cut to Kushana, Yupa, and the Valley Boys. They're exploring what remains of Sapata City, and they find a dead Hydra, which we sort of met in that first part. Looks like a big cactus dude. No mention. I don't know how else to describe it. Details might be a little lost just in the sort of old black and white manga style, but to me it looks like literally like a big fat cactus Machoke dude.
Like a turd mixed with a cactus with a little smiley face on his face, like a giant eyeball to make him look like he has a face.
Yeah. But they stumble across one which is supposedly dead. Yupa tells us that the Hydra are man-made soldiers who accompany the Divine Emperor when he conquered the Dorak lands. So another interesting reveal that these are man-made soldiers. So these are probably sort of like test subjects maybe for regrowth, or maybe it's like the same, like a world building thing where it's like the same process that they're using to sort of regrow the Emperor. They're also using to kind of grow super soldiers in a way, right? Which also reflects on the way that the god warriors are grown. I think it all kind of flows down from that technology or that part of the world. So
I think you're right. And it had like a rib cage, so it's like part of it seems humanoid in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of, it'll be interesting to see if we get more kind of body horror with the, we do get a little bit in just a couple pages here, but if we get more horror stuff from the Hydra. They're very interesting, they're very scary. It's a nice kind of small take on the large stuff.
Right.
But, so Yupa takes Mita, one of the Valley Guy's guns, and he's like, he double taps the Hydra in the head because he's like, nope, that's probably not dead. He like rips its face mask off, and they note that the mask has like spikes on the inside of it, so it's like connected to its head. Again, more like horror imagery here. But the Hydra then sort of like the one that they thought was dead kind of flips out when it gets shot in the head and actually dies. Yupa says you have to destroy the core or they'll come back to life. I put parentheses possible. This is something to do with plant mold life mixing with human life, because plants and molds both kind of have that kind of, you can't fully kill a mold. If one cell is left, it can replicate and be reborn. So maybe something like that's going on here.
I wonder if that's a situation with the God Warriors too.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I'm sure by the end of the series we'll know a little bit more about the God Warriors and what they are, because I'm not sure if them and the Hydra and all this regrowth stuff is going to be kind of man's technological folly. So they're, ignoring nature and making a man-made thing, which makes it kind of pure evil from the viewpoint of the story, or if there is going to be some kind of nature regrowth version of it where the God Warriors are based on a mold or a spore or something like that. And so it all kind of connects together and it makes, the God Warriors part of the nature, and that's all. I don't know which way it's going to go here. So, but
I don't know either, but I will say that the mold is man-made and it was like accepted by nature itself. So I could see the same thing being said of the God Warrior, maybe,
and the Hydra and stuff. Yeah, I think we'll get some kind of resolution to all that. I would hope so.
Yeah, effectively, they're creations / victims of humanity. So who knows? Probably they'll I don't know. They'll have good endings. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
So the group here, after they double tap the Hydra, they find a dying man who's in here who says his people fled. And then while they were running away, they came across a girl with a white kite. This is Nausicaä, who told them to flee because miasma that masks won't are. How did I write this? Masks will be useless against a new miasma that is coming, is essentially what she says, which is very scary. So they are running away. right here we get sort of a action scene, which is pretty cool. 3 Hydra show up, and they start chasing and sort of attacking this group. Yupa's ready, and his bird feels something, I think, on the ship. I think there's some sort of emotional connection between birds and their people, the chocobos here. His bird on the ship struggles and runs off to be with him. But these 3 Hydra chase around the people. We get a shot outside of the ships, kind of where people are waiting, as the other group explores inside. And they look up, and it's "Here Come the Bugs," which I wrote to the tune of "Here Comes the Sun." Doo doo doo. An emergency flare goes up. They got to get out of here. Oh shit, it's the climax action scene. These 3 Hydra chase the group inside the building. Kushana seems adamant here to fucking die. She tries to sacrifice herself 3 times. She's like, I will keep them all. And then Yupa has to drag her away and be like, you are not dying. Please come with me. Please stop doing this.
Quit being so suicidal.
Yeah, she's like, I mean, I get it, right? But at the same time, yeah. At a certain point, Yupa notes that these 3 Hydra were after Kushana the whole time. They're focusing on her. The others mostly get away. Yupa says, hey, whoever's in control of these, it doesn't really explain how he knows about the Hydra and how they work. My guess is Yupa might be experience. I think it's just some kind of experience, but yeah.
I think he's like a legendary swordsman. I think he's just seen this shit before.
Yeah, I'll be interested to know if it explains that or if he's just kind of unexplained. He kind of starts running to try to track down who's controlling these people. The group all gets above ground, makes a break for the ship. Their gunship blasts one of the Hydra and totally wipes out his bottom half.
That was hardcore.
Yeah, this is more of this body horror stuff with the Hydra, right? It cuts him in half and he does not die. And his top half is trying to take this ship down. It's kind of freaky. The Hydra bring the ships down. They do not let them take off. And then the Hydra kind of turn and run. And why? Zoom out the camera. The Omu is here. The Daikai show is here. It's much scarier. And whoever's controlling them is also ready to skedaddle. So this is where
the Hydra
I think
all get on a different ship that takes off at the side of the Omu.
Yeah. So I admit this might not be the first time, but this is the time where it's noted again that the Omu are here. Their eyes are not red, so they are not their attack color. They're blue. Which is interesting here because the Omu don't just barrel over the Valley Boys and their ship. They sort of let them take off in the middle of them, which, again, Omu, not angry, very peaceful, going to do their job, basically just going to die. Yupa follows the Hydra, jumps onto a ship, literally does the Tom Cruise, which one of the Mission Impossibles where he hangs off the side of a plane. He literally does that. He jumps on the side of a plane, puts his sword into it, rides into the sky, and jumps onto it. Turns out this is the Emperor's ship. So Yupa gets on. The Emperor isn't immediately aggressive towards him. He has that kind of cool confidence we talked about. The Emperor is
Emperor's instantly he's standing on top of the ship and he's like, hey, why don't you come join me? This is a once in a 300-year kind of sight. And him and Yupa just chat.
They chat out. The Emperor notes that it's very surprising for someone to know about the weak points of the Hydra in today's age. Again, this is sort of I don't know. I don't want to theorize too far, but part of me is Yupa has also been reborn, and he is the Emperor's brother. I don't think that's true, but it's one of those
I think
maybe
he's just old. I think he's just
old, and I think he just knows things because the story needs him to. I don't think it needs to be explained, but
I think you're right.
The Emperor tells Yupa, he says that woman Kushana is going to be my wife, and that's why I captured her. So we cut away, and we see Nausicaä up on this hill again. She's passed out, and the forest people, which previously had been with Yupa and that group, those same forest people, they come across her, they put her in one of their bubbles, they fix her mask, they kind of help her out. They note, I think the girl who helps Nausicaä out notes that she wishes that Nausicaä could meet her brother, who we noted was kind of the de facto leader of this forest group. It's a really short, interesting scene, kind of just setting up for Nausicaä being able to make it to the next part. Back on the ship, The helmet that the Emperor is wearing has a bunch of eyes on it, and Yupa's like, oh, I heard he has eyes in the back of his head. No, this dude has literally a helmet with like real eyes feeding him information. So I think this is, again, just one of those weird Mobius design style things, but it's really cool. I think it also confirms or feeds into, I think that he's got some kind of psychic power, because I think he connects with those eyes. And it's just another little hint towards it.
Yupa said the eyes follow him, so it's not just a helmet design. So it's like connected to his brain in some way. Yeah,
for sure. Yupa then notes, looking at this sort of Omu Daikaisha wave, that the miasma's color is wrong. And the Emperor now says, it's a sad state of affairs since his brother created the mold, which the Omu are now fighting, and no matter who wins, he and his people die. He doesn't seem super sad about it, but he definitely seems sort of like, well, again, he kind of has that cool confidence. He's like, got to deal with it. I got to go to war. It's what I have to do now.
Well, he's a warmonger by nature.
For sure.
Because, when he was at the beginning of this chapter, he's just like, let's go cause some chaos and spill some blood. So I don't think he's sad at all. I think he's like completely okay with his whole nation being destroyed. Because he's just going to go attack the Toromechians and take theirs.
Yeah, he definitely seems very... not necessarily that he's happy, he's just sort of like, well, the decision's been made for me, and this is what I was going to do anyway, so cool, let's do it.
I truly don't think he cares.
And he is not super concerned.
One thing I noticed is Yupa mentioned that that the Holy Emperor, him, conquered the Dorok nation a while back. So that's not even his original nation. It's just a nation he took.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. That the Emperor and his brother are ostensibly not Doroks, right? They conquered the Doroks and they're their leader, but they are not from the same blood, you would say. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Absolutely, yeah.
And they implemented their own religion into that society as well. So it's really interesting stuff.
Is this a comment from Miyazaki on the Americans post-World War II? Find out later.
Most definitely.
Anyways, but yeah, Yupa, I think, points out, like, hey, you could save tons of people as a huge ship, and the Emperor's like, nope, we're not going to be a refugee ship. That's not what we're doing here. This weird little scene happens where a slave or servant brings a drink to the Emperor, and the Emperor's like, no, you try it first, and the guy drinks it and coughs up blood and dies. And it's like, interesting, okay, a little thing to let you know that clearly the Doroks...
The Emperor actually drinks it, and then he's like, you drink it.
Oh, does he really? I missed that. Okay.
Yeah. So it was. I thought that scene was great.
It was a weird, goofy little. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what the fuck. Yeah. It was a fun little scene. It happened in 2 panels.
Yeah. Kushana wakes up and gets again to have a scene to be my favorite character. She kicks the ass of all these guys guarding her. She literally pulls out her double-sided hairpin and shanks a guy with it. It's this two claw-sided fist weapon. Then I'm pretty sure she I don't know if she cuts a guy's head off, but she drags a dude's head to the open door to Doom 2016 style, put his head up to the eye scanner and open the door. This is badass.
I swear our brain works the same way. I could not think of anything but rip and tear during those Kushana scenes where she's fighting her way out.
Oh, it's so because you do that in Doom 2016 3 or 4 times where you either rip a guy's head off or grab a corpse and put its head in the little eye scanner or its hand on the little pad. And she literally does it. She grabs the dude's helmeted head, holds it up to the door opens. So we learn Kushana kind of comes out and confronts the Emperor. We learn that the Emperor is named Namulith. Kushana knows him. They are familiar. He calls her the Viper's daughter. They see Kushana's men below in the miasma. Namulith essentially says, the reason I'm here with the ship and you are here is I want those men. I need a war party, right? I need men who can fight. So I need your trained men. And the condition is we're going to get married. Yay.
Yeah. It is, he's very much just a warmonger who wants her help conquering the Toromechians.
Yeah. His interest in her is not, he's not really a womanizer. He just says, I literally need your like, I need your battalions, so we're gonna get married. And then Kushana has another. I fucking love Kushana. She has this line that she says to him where she's like, "Do you think?" She's like asking him, I think, to like take off his helmet to show her his face, and she's like, "Do you think you can step naked into the viper's nest?" Which is great because he just called her the viper's daughter. It's cool that she just like owns up to it, right? That you would think, oh, the viper's daughter, like, ooh, that's an insult. That means she's like sneaky and backstabbing, and she literally is just like, yeah, I'm a viper. You think you can like step up to me? Very cool.
And this is also like a scene that happened earlier in this segment is Krishana mentions that to Yupa that she only survived all of this because she took Nausicaa's advice and released all of her anger and hatred. But she's had so much anger and hatred, and she's lived for warfare that she decided, hey, I can't be like her. Yeah. I'm not going to follow her path because I literally don't have the right. So I think this is her embracing who she is as a person.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not... It's strange. The story doesn't... I don't know. It doesn't really play this as like... I don't want to say it doesn't play it as important. To me, this is played off as like, oh yes, the humans are going to play their games. It doesn't feel nearly as important as everything else that's going on. The stuff that's about to happen, right? With the Daikai show and all that. But
and I think that's the point, right?
I do think that's the point.
And the Emperor even says, it's like, hey, we're just picking at each other at the end of the world.
Exactly.
So I don't think like what they're talking about is important at all in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of just showing human nature where they'll still have their petty little squabbles and fuck each other over when the world is literally ending right in front of them.
For sure. Nemelith says to her, let's build our Götterdämmerung, which is a German word, which literally translated means Twilight of the Gods. So that sounds a little bit more end of the worldy. So we'll see how that Götterdämmerung goes. The Doroks then come and tell Yupa. Yupa, I think, is separated at this point from Nemelith and Kushana, and they're like, oh, our emperor's great. He can do anything. He's got a god warrior. And Yupa's like, what? He has a god warrior? I can't help feeling like god warrior is not a great translation of whatever the Japanese is here. I don't know. It doesn't. It feels a little clumsy to me when there's cool stuff like Daikai Show and Götterdämmerung in here, and then they just like, oh yeah, God Warrior.
I think it kind of makes sense because like it sounds like a clunky name, but it makes sense within the context because they ended the world in 7 days, right? So
for sure,
I think it's like kind of just a organic warrior that has the power of a god that just ends things. I'm
going to see.
I don't know what the official or like
their official title is Kyoshinhei, and Shin is like new. Hold on, I'm going to use this cool Google Translate thing that I got because I can literally hold this up and it'll tell me what it thinks this means. Okay, just translated it into EE. It thinks that it's just E.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad they're called God Warriors, I guess.
So Kyoshinhei is directly translated Giant God Warrior. So I guess God Warrior, they just took out the giant. Got it. But yeah, anyways, I don't know. I feel like there should be a better, like, I don't know. It feels more clunky a translation than putting in, like, Götterdämmerung or Daikai Show. Those both kind of work for me. Anyways.
I think those work because we don't know what those like mean in English.
It's also one of those things where
translations are always a little.
Yeah, well, and it's always one of those things where I can go, okay, Daikai Show, I can look up what that means, or they tell me that means, great wave or great, whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, I now sort of have context and a cool word to go with it, which I think triggers my like fantasy sci-fi loving brain a little bit more than like a direct translation where it's like God Warrior. It's like, oh, okay, that's like kind of more direct. Like if they had called them If they have called them the Kyoshinhei, I would have been like, oh, they have a Kyoshinhei. And I know that means God Warrior. And to me, that means that I have both a cool word and a context for what it means. Whereas when I just have God Warrior, it's like, okay, it's telling me what it is every time, right? Like,
I think there's a line because I think God Warrior's fine because
it's not as bad as some things, but yeah,
like overly keeping things like it's like calling the warlords the Shichibukai in One Piece, right?
I had a lot of trouble with that reading One Piece because I kept the translations of those old chapters were all over the place. So it would be like, oh, in one translation it's the warlords, in the other translation it's the Shichibukai, and so it's like, wait, these are the same things. I didn't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I get why they simplified it because it sounds cool, but I think you have to use it sparingly for it to continue for certain things to continue to sound good.
Sure, absolutely. So next scene, we cut back to the Dorok priest. He's dealing with some crisis of faith from the people, but really they've just found a new god to worship, and he doesn't like that. They sort of want to go home. They're like, no, we want to go back to our lands. He's like, you cannot do that. You will die. They sort of have this undying faith in Nausicaä, which is clearly heresy and also dangerous. They think she's going to protect them. She might. We don't know. She definitely is not in a position to do it right now, but you never know. The priest thinks that this boy Chikaku is using he also has these sort of psychic speaking powers. The priest thinks that this psychic boy is like projecting, oh, Nausicaä will come and save you, but he's not. It's definitely implied that he isn't doing that. But these people clearly are hearing some kind of voice. I don't know where this is coming from. I think it might be the Omu, it might be Nausicaä, there might be something else going on here. I'm not sure.
This part was a little confusing for me because Chikaku stated he used his power the first time, to get the refugees on the ship, to rescue the refugees. I think he said, yeah, I used my power to the priest. But the second time, he's like, well, even I'm not that powerful.
Yeah, he's like, I can't talk to 400 people at the same time. No way, not me. Yeah,
so I don't know who did it. Was it him? Was it someone else? I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe this is the Omu warning part of their family, part of their nature to leave. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's coming and it's here. The Doroks and Nausicaä both in their little scenes here note that, yep, the Daikaisho's coming. It's here. We cut to Nausicaä flying sort of up over the Omu, and we get... I think this is the first 2-page spread we've gotten in all of Nausicaä, and it's gorgeous. It's literally just the Daikaisho wave of the Omu and Nausicaä flying above them, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that was great.
I think it's the first 2-page spread we've gotten. It might be the second, I don't remember, but it's very cool. Nausicaä flies up. She finds one of the older Omu, who was one of the ones that told her, hey, don't follow us, run away, we're going here to do stuff.
Right, the one she met in the swamp, right?
Yes. With the sort of older one that she noted was like, oh, this one's got all the old growth on it.
Yeah. The one who initially gave her the warning. That makes sense, yeah.
Right. Nausicaä kind of has her crisis, not really a crisis of faith, but she kind of is, asking, like, why do all the Omu have to die because a man made this mold, right? And I just literally transcribed these quotes in the next couple of parts because I think they're so good. She says, I know there's no way to undo any of this. I couldn't do anything, but please don't leave me all alone. I wrote, bro, the humans, Nausicaä, they're still around. They still need you. Nausicaä is... Yeah.
This is the part I mentioned earlier where I think it's very interesting, Nausicaa's disposition. Because she then goes on to state that it's like, I know humans are wretched creatures who created this whole mess. It's clear that she values all life, but she values other life more than human life.
Right. Well, and
I think that's exceedingly interesting because it's like your protagonist cares more about mold life and bug life over like human life. Yeah, she does. Interesting.
Right. Well, and I think, and here's what I think the story is doing with that. I think that this story could be told and play out in essentially nearly the exact same way without the Nausicaä character, right? You could have these warring people, you could have this mold, you could have it wouldn't quite work, right? Nausicaä is the catalyst for a lot of change and a lot of realization in people to change and push things along. But Nausicaä, I think, plays the role in this story as she is literally the personification of nature, and not a personification in the sort of non-literal sense, but a literal. She is sort of like
nature's apostle, right?
Exactly, right. She's literally the herald of nature in this story. And so the reason that I think that it shows her more concerned about nature, more concerned about the Omu and all this stuff is because if she didn't feel that way, if she was more concerned about humans and stuff, she would not have the same role. Because there's other people. We clearly see lots of the man-made leaders. We see Kushana caring for her men and wanting to save them. We see the Dorok priests caring about those refugees. So we see people caring about other people. We know that is a story point. That is a thing that humans have in this world. It isn't that no humans care for other humans. We know that. But we need a sort of human to personify nature to show us that humans need to care about nature and nature needs to care about itself and all this stuff. I don't think I have all the information to fully vocalize it yet.
You have a good point, because if Nausicaä prioritized human life more than the lives of bugs or plants, then the world would have been fucked and the story wouldn't happen.
Exactly.
She would have shot the Omu that was chasing Yupa at the very beginning of the story, and none of this would have happened, right? Like, I mean, everything would have happened except without a human savior. Like, all of this would have happened. Subtract Nausicaä, because Nausicaä is a Nausicaä in this situation.
Yeah.
So it would have just been dark.
Yeah, and this is maybe sort of the most. It's a more interesting take of the sort of, I mentioned Disney princess, loves nature and stuff. But this is different than that. I don't think I want to use that comparison anymore, because usually the sort of Disney princess care for nature character is very much about, I love humans. Let's treat the animals and the plants in the forests. Let's make sure they're all equally important. And Nausicaä is not like that. Nausicaa does not say, why do all the people and all the Omu have to die? She's like, why do all the Omu have to die? Why are the nature and the creatures to Nausicaa are so much more important to her than the humans. She does care about the humans, but as we've seen, she's literally willing to go to war. I mean, you mentioned it, right? She was unwilling to shoot a rampaging Omu at the very start. She was not willing to do that, but she is willing to agree to Kushana to literally go to war and kill people to have her, to get away, to help nature. So,
and to help humans. But she's way more willing to take human life than she is any kind of like natural life outside of humans,
which makes her way more interesting than a Disney princess character who's like, well, humans matter and nature matters, let's make sure they matter the same amount. Nausicaa is like, well, humans matter, but nature matters more to me, a lot more, and I'm very much more interested in saving nature and preventing the Omu from dying, and it's tragic to me that the Omu are dying. She's clearly sad, but she doesn't have a crisis around all the people that died when the Daikaisho came through, but she has a crisis when all these Omu show up and say they're going to die. Like, it's very interesting. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think it's really compelling too. It's like a situation, if you love nature, but a wolf was attacking you and you had a gun, I think you would still shoot the wolf, whereas Nausicaä would probably just let the wolf attack her.
Yeah, Nausicaä would not do that, which like you said, is a much more interesting character than most sort of nature-loving characters here. So we get another psychic chat with Creepy Skull Dude. The Bones Man says, no need to weep for the Omu. They are performing a sacred role. The Omu were created to clean this planet that humans have contaminated, and it's the same thing for the mold. I kind of believe him here. I don't think he's kind of spouting bullshit. I think his point of view on it might be a little wrong, but I do think that he's sort of communicating that, like, the Omu are doing what they need to do to cleanse the world, and that's okay.
I don't even think his point of view is wrong. I just think Nausicaä has knowledge past logic. Mm-hmm. I think the skeleton is kind of correct. You know, like this is all its natural course. Humanity did this to itself, and now nature's cleaning up after it at its own expense. And Nausicaa is kind of just more enlightened than anyone else in this series, including the audience, right? I think if I was in this position, I would say, oh, this is all fucked.
Yeah. She's very much like I mentioned, being sort of the personification of nature. She's very much transhuman. Subhuman is not the word. She's transcended above humanity in a way in the story already, right? She kind of starts there and becomes even more so. And I'm guessing by the end of it, it's going to be even, I think it's going to be even more. But anyways, the Holy One tries to, or the Bone Man tries to say, I am the Holy One. And she's like, Lamau, no, you ain't. You smell bad. Holy Man did not smell bad.
He got very offended.
Yeah,
for a skeleton that represents the void. He got very pissed off at Nausicaa.
Yeah, he literally pulls a "No You" card on her. I like this part a lot because, kind of what you're just talking about. The skeleton guy calls her out and is like, in this like dream world, he's like, look at your hands, and she's like, there are blood on my hands, and he's like, look under your feet, and she's like, I am standing on the dead body of men that I have killed. And that's like, again, I think that High Lord Wolnir here I think he's kind of right in this interaction.
He's right, but he was also petty, which I thought that was I thought that was kind of funny.
But it's also, I mean, he kind of calls out exactly what we were talking about, though, right? That Nausicaa clearly values nature over humanity.
Right.
He's saying, is that right? You need to think about that. And I think that she maybe will have to think about that later. I don't know. We'll have to see.
And then he spews darkness out of his eyes and mouth.
I am the Holy One. Here's darkness. Yeah. So, and then here's some more of that dialogue I was saying that I just copied down exactly. She says, I don't need the nothingness to tell me that we are a cursed people. We're the ugliest of all creatures. We do nothing but harm to the earth, plundering it and polluting it and burning it. The Omu are far more beautiful than we are. What good is it to beg forgiveness now? The Omu have traveled a long, long way, half blinded by the spawn forming over their eyes in order to try to heal the wounds that humans have inflicted. And now that journey is about to end. So yeah, this is just Nausicaa essentially saying all the stuff that we picked up on earlier. She literally says, humans fucking suck. The Omu are better. I like them better. And I'm very sad about them coming here to die. And it sucks that it is our fault.
And she says, I'm going to go die with my friends.
Yeah. She says, I'll go with the Omu. It's really interesting, though, that she does still sort of include herself in the group of humans whose fault it is. I think Nausicaa's very mature. She does not really shy away over the fact that, yeah, she has killed people, and she's kind of part of the problem purely because she was born human and not, as an Omu or a part of nature. But yeah, I don't know. It is a sort of a character stressor inside of her, that she is this personification of nature, but personified as a human. I'll go back a little bit to my biblical theory that I had growing up in the church, but one of the interesting things about the sort of lore and legend of Jesus Christ, right, is that he is God made man, which is, I think, a pretty good analog to Nausicaa here, who is sort of nature made man, right? / woman made, man in the mankind way.
Her little buddy, what's his name? Kukaku or something like that?
Yeah, Chikaku?
Chikaku, yeah. When they were talking about Nausicaa being the apostle, like the priest said, well, of course, she's not like an apostle. Her wings that they're talking about aren't growing out of her. Like, it's just a glider. And Chikaku's like, well, yeah, she'd be a monster if she had wings growing out of her. She's just a human, like all apostles. So I thought that was cool. It's like, at the end of the day, she is human.
Yeah, which is very, like I said, because you could kind of take Nausicaa out of the story and just have nature be sort of its own representation, but it's more interesting to have nature made human and as Nausicaa here as a character in the story than it is to just have nature kind of preach for itself, I guess you could say.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, Nausicaa says, I'll go with the Omu. I'll just die with them. Fuck that. She's basically just like, fuck it, nothing better to do. I'll just go die. Like, fuck humans. I only love the Omu and nature. They're going to die. I'm going to die. She crashes down. She lands on the Omu. She notes again that they are not mad with anger. They don't have red eyes. They have their cool blue eyes. She notes that the Daikaisho isn't some kind of punishment or revenge for human foolishness in the way that, in the way that the Skull Dude was telling her that it was. She notes the Omu are simply trying to heal the Earth's wounds by becoming living seedbeds for the Sea of Corruption. It's the forest. The Sea of Corruption itself is moving. And she again says, I'll become part of the forest too. That's what she wants. She's personification of nature. She wants to return to nature. Nausicaä finds sort of an island in the center, which is where the Scout Omu was, and the point where the mole will meet. She lands there, kind of starts to be overtaken. She lays on the Omu, starts to be overtaken. She can feel the growth the roots starting to take hold, she notes. She feels the Omus under her dying. She lays down, gets covered in miasma, but the Omu she's laying on grabs her with his tentacles, puts her in its mouth, swallows her, and gives her a little air bubble. And then slime meets mold. Everything is fucked. Bottom of the bottom here, we cut to the Dorok ship for I think 1 page, and Chikuku is like, tells the priest, it's like, okay, I don't feel her. Nausicaa's gone, and that is the end of part 5.
What a fucking place to end, because I just wanted to flip the page and keep
I know,
reading.
Right? Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, in my mind, it's like, clearly Nausicaa isn't dead, but you know what? At this point, I'd probably give myself like 80-20, maybe 90-10 Nausicaa's not dead, because like clearly I think she was saved, but it's like, you know what? She could die there, and the story could resolve itself with nature sort of cleansing the world, and the warring tribes, and Kushana, does whatever. I think it would still be a really good story if that was the end for Nausicaa.
As long as the Omu didn't put her in the mouth and she molded over, that would be a satisfying ending for me. But I'm glad it didn't end there, because there's too much left that I need out of the other characters too.
Yeah, for sure.
But either way, what a fucking this is one of my favorite segments of the book, because
I feel like I say it every week. It's like,
event.
This is my new favorite section of the book. I know I definitely said that on part 3 and part 4 and now in part 5, but like, especially thinking about, I think part 4 might still be my favorite, but this part I think is a follow-up to part 4 is just really good. And again, it's like, Nausicaa...
It's the extinction event. You saw the extinction event. Yeah.
It's the bomb dropping is what we're seeing. It is the lowest of the low. Everything from here should be sort of up, although I don't think it's going to necessarily get happier. I think we're going to probably get a long drawn out low here. And that will sort of be our climax, right? Will be Daikaisho, people going to war. Who knows? It's actually kind of hard for me to predict what happens after this, because what do we have? We have Kushana and Namulith. They are going to go get her men. Maybe they're going to assault the Tormekian capital. That might be my guess there.
They have to. Yeah, they have to. And plus, they have the God Warrior with them as well. Mm-hmm. Speaking of God Warrior, you remember when the God Warrior is being airlifted, right?
Yes. Yeah, part 3, I think, or 4. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the same God Warrior that we see in this segment.
I think it
just got moved to the Dorok capital.
Yes, because I think the Dorok guys say that they have a God Warrior, and I think it's the same one. I think that's the same one from Pajite, right? That they half grew. I think it's all the same God Warrior. And
they describe like both the God Warrior when it was being airlifted and this one as like effectively a baby. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the same one. Yeah,
but I mean, I don't know. It's like, this is really good. What a great story. I'm continually, even though we've said it for 5 parts now, I'm continually impressed of how well written this is, how cool and different and progressive and not stereotypical at all, even though it kind of is preaching, I don't want to say it's like preaching a stereotypical save nature, be good to nature, because it's really not. Like, its take on humans and nature here, I think, is something unique from what I've consumed, right? I'm sure there's other takes on this, but this is not Fern Gully, right? Like, Fern Gully is a great example of like men who cut down the forest bad, forest people good, forest fight back, forest win, right? Like that's Fern Gully. This is Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind is not Fern Gully. This is several multitudes more nuanced and complex and intense than something like that is, especially in its messaging.
You called it progressive when it was written like 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, in the 80s.
You're still absolutely right. Yeah, you're still absolutely right. It is progressive, but it was made in the fucking 80s too. Yeah.
Yeah.
This dives really deep into just the nature of humans in general. And I really appreciate that. And it's not like all humans are fucking evil. It's all humans are inherently selfish. And and there's shades of gray where they are capable of love, empathy, kindness, and all that. But it shows like all sides of humanity, and I think that's perfect.
And I also think that it is. I use the word preaching again, but it is preaching something which I have seen before, but I don't want to say it's probably not the first piece of art. It's one of the first pieces of art that I've ever read that is so good at it, but the sort of humans being a part of nature is, I don't think it's been fully embraced yet, but I think it's where we're going, right? I think what we're going to see in the next two parts is we have seen sort of humanity and nature on two sides of the story. They obviously have intersected kind of with the mold, and we even see with the Hydra and stuff like that, there's clearly this sort of nature and human interaction.
And we already have an example, like in the forest people, that it is possible to coexist. Yeah. And I think that they're going to be a larger part coming up. And I think the reason they are introduced is exactly that, to show that, because I think as opposed to, again, something like Fern Gully that preaches, people who cut down the forest are bad, the people are bad, the forests are good, if you help the forest, you're good. I think there is more of a message here around, it doesn't matter if you're the man in the machine cutting down the trees of the forest. You are a part of nature too. And I think that's where we're going with Nausicaä, right? I think that I think what Nausicaä is trying to say, at least what I can sort of glean from it so far, is that it doesn't matter if, again, I think the mold is maybe the biggest point of this, right? The Doroks made this mold to be a sort of biological weapon, and nature kind of said, doesn't matter. The Omu said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that this is a man-made weapon. It's a part of nature. And so I think what Nausicaä is going for, that's different than a lot of like nature first, nature forward messaging, is that I think that it is saying, it literally doesn't matter if, like I said, if you're the man with the saw cutting down the tree, you are as much a part of nature as the tree is, because you consume nature. When you die, you are returned to nature, so on and so forth, circle of life type thing. I think that's where we're going with the story, because I'm seeing, I don't think it's fully giving us that message yet, but I see it under the sort of pages here of it is definitely saying, like you were saying, all these humans are so nuanced and so interesting and so different, but they're all sort of connected in the same way that I think like the mold is like a nuanced character, and the Omu are also like kind of a nuanced character. The Omu and the mold is not presented as only terrible. It's only a weapon. It's only bad and needs to be destroyed. The Omu are not only the Daikaisha. They are not only aggressive. They are not only here to wipe out humanity. They have their own needs, their own wants, they're sort of characters in this story, and they're all presented in this sort of, grayscale, is sort of in the obvious way to state it, but and it seems to me you're right. It's like I think the story is saying that all life, regardless of how it's created and whatnot, has the ability to coexist as long as people respect the life around them, and not just human life, in placing value only in other humans, but living and coexisting with nature surrounding them, regardless of where it came from.
Yeah, and I even think that I think I agree exactly with what you're saying. I think even coexistence is not the right word, because I think coexisting implies there is one thing and then there is another thing, and they are separate and they must live together. And I think
it's all Nausicaa, one thing.
Right, exactly. I don't think Nausicaa is saying there's humans and there's nature and they have to learn to live together, which I think is what a lot of sort of nature first, nature forward, preserve nature messaging is about, right? We're the humans, they're the nature, we have to get along and live off each other. I think Nausicaa is much more saying there's not two things here. There's just nature. There's just the singular organism of our world, and we are all a part of it. And the sooner we start learning that, the more sort of better decisions we will make, the more impactful. I don't know exactly where it's going to resolve, but yeah.
Well, it's stated on the pages themselves, right? Where with the bugs dying to accept the mold is the fact is the bugs probably, or the Omu probably don't think of themselves as dying for this, it's just the circle of life, and humans are a part of it that are trying not to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting. I went back; it kind of recontextualizes one of those pages of dialogue that Nausicaa says. She says, when they're in the little darkness with the skull guy, she says, "I don't need the nothingness to tell me that we are a cursed people. We're the ugliest of all creatures. We do nothing but harm the earth, plundering it, polluting it, burning it. The Omu are far more beautiful than we are. What good is it to beg forgiveness now? The Omu have traveled a long, long way, half blinded by the spawn forming over their eyes in order to try to heal the wounds that humans have inflicted, and now that journey is about to end." I think it's interesting to recontextualize that now that we've thought and spoke about Nausicaa and this sort of nature and humans coexisting, because I think this might... Here's my prediction. I think Nausicaa is actually too extreme. I think she is falling into the same folly that those other stories do, which is to say humans and nature are separate. We have to exist together, but we're separate things. I think she's making that distinction here, and I think she's wrong. And I think that her turn and her character will be realizing what we've been talking about here, right? Realizing that humans aren't this cursed creature that is separate from nature, that fights against it, that is the bad part. The humans are just as much a part of nature as the Omu are. Because in that paragraph, I wouldn't necessarily say that she doesn't know that, but she doesn't think about things in that way. She is separating humanity from nature and and I don't think that's what the story is going to say. So I think that her turn will be, I think everyone else's turn is, hey, stop being bad to nature. That part's kind of more obvious, but I think Nausicaa's turn is going to be more from this is maybe sort of like a anti-Greenpeace, anti-extremist Greenpeace messaging kind of thing, where it's like, hey, don't hurt humans to preserve nature, because it's all the same and you need to value it all the same. So I think she's going to come around and have to confront her own humanity and other humanities and accept them as part of her nature, which she is the sort of prophet for. I think that'll be her.
You're probably right here, and I think she has a part of that mindset in her already. When she said she hopes she turns into a tree while she's still alive, which sounds horrifying, by the way. But putting that aside, I think she says that out of anger because she can't do anything about the situation, and the things she loves are dying. But I think I think the manga at the very beginning emphasized how young Nausicaa is.
Yes, and quick to anger and quick to sort of dramatic emotional moments. I think she's still there, So
I think she's still learning a lot as she goes. So I think even though we mentioned how enlightened she was, I think there's a lot of things that you just can't put together at that age that she's putting together pretty fast now.
Yeah, it's a good character design to have her age be related to the growth she goes through. Is a pretty typical thing. But I mean, it's super interesting. And you know what? It might not go that way. This might turn out to be a literal humans are the devils and nature is the thing to preserve. I could see it going that way. It might. I don't think it is, but
I don't see it happening because it's
I don't think it's been set up for that. Yeah, I don't think it's been set up for that. Yeah.
I have faith after reading what I've read so far that it won't paint all of humanity as like, oh wow, these guys just fucking suck, Yeah. If it does, then it should go a kill all humans ending.
Yes.
At that point.
And let me see, because I wanted to see the publication dates, because this part, let me see, chapters, this I think we're on here. Yeah, so these chapters were published in like 1993, most of them. So we're coming up on, and the next set of chapters were published in 1994, and then I think it's in 94 and 95 where he directs Princess Mononoke. So when is... Because Mononoke Hime... 97. Okay, so a couple years after that. But I definitely think... Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Princess Mononoke. I think that Miyazaki himself here is exploring... I don't think he has it all figured out yet of what the relationship between man and nature is. I think he's exploring it really deeply here. I think he'll probably come to a conclusion by the end of this, and then I think he will reiterate that conclusion in Princess Mononoke. And I'm trying to remember, because in Princess Mononoke was maybe more of a humans very evil, nature very good type story.
Actually, Irontown, which is basically... Princess Mononoke hates Irontown because it's humans cutting down the forest. Learn to coexist with the forest once they understand the forest has its own will. But like the greedy humans, like I think it has a big emphasis on human greed, despite it has a much more capitalist. I think Mononoke Hime has a much more capitalist angle than Nausicaä. Does not really involve capitalism in any way. It does talk about. I think
a little bit.
A few themes are humans' greed and lust for power hold as a consistent theme between the two. Yeah. I like that Mononoke also doesn't paint Irontown, which signifies human progress, as evil. You know, right, they're all just people trying their best. Right. But could be on the other side, there are humans that are evil. So I don't know. Yeah. This is complex and nuanced, though. Like it feels like everyone is shades of gray.
It's a lot. I feel like we could keep talking about this forever, but we won't belabor the point. We won't go too long.
Let's call it until next time.
Yeah, I mean, tons of cool stuff. Any final thoughts before we hit the end here on part 5 of Nausicaä Daikaisho?
Nah, brother, I'm good. I just want to read more.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Let me find my outro if it exists on one of these pages that I hadn't brought over. It doesn't, so we'll do it live. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening or watching. Stay tuned next week for part 6, and then in 2 weeks it will be the final part 7. After we are done with Nausicaä, we're just going to be doing a couple of review videos. By that time, One Piece live action will be out, so that will be a little bit more exciting. So come back and join us for those. If you want to check us out, don't forget we have a Patreon, patreon.com/whitegrayblack. Always give us a like or subscribe. We appreciate your thumbs up more than anything. And yeah, thanks again for being here.
See you later.
Don't forget, read more Nausicaä. Adios.